Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Jasmine Kaur and I will be your moderator for today's session. We're delighted to have all of you with us. Before I introduce you to Inderpreet Singh, our presenter today, let me take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about Sikh Research Institute, or SikhRI. SikhRI is a community development organization focusing on education programs. Over the last 6 years, SikhRI has established SIDDIC, the only Sikh leadership development program in the world, developed SOJI, the first ever K-12 curriculum in language arts and Sikh heritage for Sikh children, facilitated Liv, the first and only Sikhi webinars connecting learners worldwide, cultivated Sevadar, the first ever workshop to train staff and personnel of Sikh institutions, and supported 35 in the Widow Colony, films that seek to educate and motivate. Let us begin our session today. Your presenter will be Inderpreet Singh. Inderpreet Singh is a technology professional currently working for a multinational high-tech firm as Director of Emerging Technologies. His passion in Sikhi is Sikhi and Panthic-related community projects and is heavily involved with Sikh youth camps, retreats, and conferences where he has conducted seminars, lectures, and interactive workshops on Gurmat-related topics. Inderpreet is an active volunteer and member of the advisory board of the Sikh Research Institute. He also serves on the board of advisors of the Sikh Scholarship Foundation. Without further ado, let me pass it over to Inderpreet Singh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I hope everyone can hear me well. This presentation that we are going to do today has been done in the past in multiple venues. First time we're going to be doing it in the webinar venue, although this is a rerun of a previous session that we also had. I hope everyone can hear me well. If during the course of the presentation you're having difficulty hearing or understanding me, please feel free to use the chat session to let us know how it's going. Okay, so what I wanted to do today is to go over the topic here is Sikh Rahat Maryada. Many of you have not only heard about it, know it very well, understand it, and have read through it. Some of you, it may be an introduction to. So we'll cover all different aspects of it. First start with some inspiration as to why we're doing this and what's the reasoning behind not just the Sikh Rahat Maryada, but learning about it. And what's the main focus? Obviously, Guru-centeredness. Then, Jasmine, actually, you have to go on mute. Okay, thank you. And then, Sikh Rahat Maryada sometimes is called just literally the Sikh Code of Conduct. Sikh Code of Conduct, or Code of Conducts in general, can be theoretical, can be just on paper, but how is that converted into reality? I'm going to touch on one aspect is what is the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. Talk about the historical background of the Sikh Rahat Maryada, where it came from, how is it relevant today, and just maybe talk about a few different sections of the Sikh Rahat Maryada. We would like to keep this session as interactive as possible, as Gurvinder Singh had said, so feel free to start with either with chats or with even verbal questions along the way, which is done through Jasmine Kaur. So you have to chat with her first, and then she will open it up. Okay, so without further ado, I want to share this hukum that came from Darbar Sahib, from the Guru Granth Sahib, page 712. There is no particular reason for choosing this hukamnama. It just happened to be the one on May 16th, I think, of this year. And I thought it's quite relevant to the topic that we have at hand. So I'm going to read it out first. Todi Mahalla Panjwan, Manuk bin Buje Birtha Aya, Anik Saj Sigar Baho Karta Jo Mirtak Odaya Rahao. धाय धाय किरपन श्रम कीनो एकत्र करी है माया, दान पुण्य ही संतन सेवा कित ही काज न आया। कर आभरण सवारी से जा कामन ठाट बनाया, संग न पायो अपने परते पेख पेख दुख पाया। सारो दिनस मजूरी करता कहो मुसल है छराया, खेद पयो बेगारी नयाई करके काम न आया। पयो अनुग्रह जाको प्रभ को तिस हृदय नाम वसाया, साध संगत कै पाछे पर्यो जन नानक हर रस पाया। A literal translation, especially of the Rahal we took, is actually quite simple. Manuk bin bujhai birtha aya. Bujhai is to understand, or to contemplate about and to really introspect about. So Manuk, human life, without understanding is birtha, useless. So coming into this world is useless. And how? Guru Sahib gives us example. Anik saaj sigar baho karta, jo mirtak odaya. While living, if you do all of different kinds of decorations, saaj sigar is decorations, covering yourself with beautiful clothes, makeup, jewelry, etc. You do a lot of that, baho karta, jo mirtak odaya. Without understanding and living is as if doing covering up a dead body with beautiful clothes as well. So this gives us indication here. So the interpretation is that without living a fruitful, thoughtful life, no matter what you do from the outside, from a ritualistic perspective, some even traditions that we partake in, really is not worthwhile. It's not useless. There's something a lot more than just doing the external manifestations of one's faith. There has to be both an internal as well as an external, both at the same time. An internal meaning a contemplative. So, and then the rest of the Shabad is really more examples, very pertinent ones. Here's the first one: is Dhai Dhai Kirpan Sram Kino Ikat Kari Hai Maya. Businessmen are continuously running after money. They're figuring out how to expand their businesses. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But Guru Sahib is explaining, Dhan punya hi santan seva. The result of all of that expansion of business is material wealth. And unless that material wealth is shared, Dhan punya hi santan seva, shared with the community, shared with others, then that wealth is kisi kit hi kaj na aya. It's actually not useful. The usefulness of gathering wealth is so that it can be put to proper positive use. Now, whatever that is interpreted by people as to what is their proper positive use of wealth, but that's the point in this one. The second one is giving an example of a wife. It's metaphor, but it's a specific example of a wife wearing beautiful clothes, preparing the home for the coming of her husband, wearing a lot of jewelry and decorations. Kar abharan, abharan savari se ja, kaman thought banaya. Thought is adoring herself. Sang na payo apne parte, but at the end of the day, the husband's a little bit busy, has other things in mind, and doesn't pay attention to the wife. Pek pek dukh paya. And all of the decorations that the wife did, she actually looks at that. She actually looks at her gane or her jewelry, and actually feels even more sorrowful, whereas she had that anticipation of joy with the husband. Saro dinas majuri karta. Another example is of someone who is now doing laborful work, using hands and putting a lot of energy into things, but not making anything useful. Khed bheo begari nyai karke kaam na hai. It's not useful for back at home, to help the family. So anyway, there's a lot of actions that all of us pursue, a lot of things that we do, a lot of areas that we focus on in our worldly lives. At the end of the day, without introspection, without understanding, manuk bin bujhe bhirta aya. And Guru Sahib says, Payo angrah jako prabko tis hirde naam vasaya. It's only through grace that we get the opportunity for understanding. We get the opportunity to hirde naam vasaya. We get to imbibe those virtues of Vaheguru, that naam virtue, and vasana in your mind, internally, result is a catalyst to do a specific type of action. You know, Hirde Nam Vasaya, if it's all it does is just remains in the Hirda, it really doesn't have any usefulness to it. So Guru Sahib said, Sa Sangat ke pache paryo jan nanak har ras paya. Once I have integrated with the community, with the Sad Sangat, and shared those virtues, jan nanak har ras paya, then I truly understand the beauty and the enjoyment of life, because my internal and my external actions become one. So I thought this was a really good backdrop to the Sikh Rahat Maryada, which, you know, many people interpret to be the external manifestations. What are our read traditions? What are our external manifestations of the, for example, the Panchkakar, and how that is, you know, just defined in here? Well, it has to go together with something internal as well, and that's what hopefully we're going to get across today. Always, myself personally, but also others at the Sikh Research Institute, really inspired by Professor Puran Singh's quotes. And in this he writes, what really is the Guru Khalsa, the community, right? In the constitution of the Khalsa Commonwealth, the greatest act of genius of Guru Gobind Singh was that he transferred the divine sovereignty vested in him to the God-inspired people. God-inspired, Manuk bin Bujhe, so understanding. And there's some inspiration, a divine inspiration in the back. The Khalsa. The constitution of the Khalsa was thus built on the heart shrines of humanity, inspired with love of God, and on the God consciousness of disciples. Consciousness, Bujhe, understanding, not on law books. So the first fundamental lesson for today, and by the way, I'm not teaching as a professor teaches, I'm just sharing my views, but the lesson for me is Puran Singh interprets Gurbani and the Sikh way of life, saying, don't confine the Sikh Rahat Maryada or the Guru Granth Sahib to be a bunch of do's and don'ts, you know, a law book of how to live your life. There's some inspiration behind it, and the inspiration of Guru Granth Sahib is divine inspiration. The Guru Khalsa Panth has manifested their traditions, the lifestyle, and code of conduct in the Sikh Rahat Maryada. I would like to reiterate this. This is how I like to present it. Those that have been on Sikh Research Institute webinars before may have always seen this, but it's not something that I'll be bold enough to say, this is not something that the Sikh Research Institute invented, this framework. This has been around for quite a while. I was reading Gurbachan Singh Gulshan, I was reading a couple of other texts, and every time they try to explain an idea from the Gurmat perspective, from the lens of Gurmat, Gurmat being, you know, through the eyes of the Guru or through the mindset of the Guru. They always use the evidence from Gurbani, so scripture. They then present a Sakhi of some kind, basically either of the Guru's lives or of Guru-inspired individuals, Gurmukhs of the past, and then bring it down to, okay, how does that manifest in our Rahat, in our you know, day-to-day traditions, in our code of conduct and our discipline. So when you look at any topic and you want to look at it from the Sikh perspective or the Guru perspective, these are the key three ingredients that are required. Then you get a holistic view. Otherwise, for sure, we have all of the answers in Guru Granth Sahib. I am a firm believer in that. But the literal translation of the Guru Granth Sahib is the first step, but the interpretation of that message and the evidence of that interpretation, how it was lived by the Gurus, is available in our history. How it is being lived by Guru Sikhs today or of the past is available in our Rahat. So that's what we're going to try to do here today. Also, I mean, we look at the Sikh Rahat Maryada, let's look at all of the different perspectives. I already presented a Gurbani perspective. Let's now just go quickly to a side topic. When we do talk about code of conducts or constitutions or law books, and that's, by the way, what the Supreme Court really is. It's the interpretation of the Constitution in the current specific contemporary time frame. If the Supreme Court justices just went literally by the letter of the law as presented in the Constitution, it would be very narrow. That you could not apply it to the dynamic nature of life that is today. So if we look at any kind of code book or law book with the letter of the law, all we're going to be confined to is, okay, does it meet the minimal requirements? Am I in compliant with this law? Is it a check mark item? Okay, ji, main apne case rakhe hue ne, I have kept my uncut hair as demanded by the law book. I'm good to go. Main to tar gaya ji. You know, so it's a very narrow impact, and the key point is main, right? I am compliant with such and such. It's the impact is narrow. If you recall back to Puran Singh's quote, it's the Commonwealth, it's the Constitution of the Khalsa, the plural. And in Sikhi, Saad Sangat aspect is prime. So and Professor Teja Singh, another one of my most favorite authors, presents that the key difference between Sikhi and other probably Western, but also Eastern faiths is that the salvation, quote unquote, you know, whatever we understand as salvation, is not of an individual. It's not about my soul being salvaged, not my soul achieving a certain state. It is the community achieving a certain state. That's why community, Sad Sangat, is of ultimate importance. Now, if you take something from the spirit of the law, now the possibilities expand. The impact is not on the single practitioner, it is all of the practitioners. Now, let's be careful here. I mean, the whole point about our faith, Sikhi, is not about quantity, it's about quality. But then again, the quality that diversity brings is also huge. So the large impact and the possibility to expand, the message here is not, hey, there's a lot more people that can be, you know, incorporated in this community. It has to do with the compassionate nature of our interpretations. Here's where let's take one example. The letter of the law says that one cannot commit adultery. Out of the 4 kurats, one of the kurats is do not commit adultery. If we just take the letter of the law, one would say, okay, I just don't commit adultery, but you know, I can before marriage, or if after I'm a widow, or something like that. Let me take the spirit of the law, so I can do it after marriage or before marriage. You know, that doesn't make sense. Adultery means, you know, anyone other than your spouse. So having sexual relations with anyone other than your spouse is that's both the spirit and the letter of the law for one of the 4 kurats. Or you know, this may be sound like a joke, but you know, tambaku da vartav nahi karna, not to partake in smoking of tobacco. Some people say, oh, see, tobacco is mentioned, but alcohol isn't mentioned. By the way, it is, but that's in a different section. But one can say, like Bill Clinton, oh, I didn't inhale, and I'm not using tobacco. So, you know, those kind of things that people try to take the letter of the law and just confine it, and the checkmark kind of attitude, that's not what we're after. That's not what we should be pursuing in our life, and understanding what is the SikhRI Maryada. Okay, so just one word of letter versus spirit I thought would be very important to talk about. So any questions along? That was kind of the intro. Now I'm going to dive deep into the meaning, the history, the origins, and the background of the SikhRI Maryada. So literally, Rahit means mode of living or conduct of life. Maryada is tradition, a practice. So Rahit Maryada is the, you know, tradition. It's all encompassing, the traditions and the code of conduct of life. If you interpret it, it means really what are the principles for living my life from all aspects, both not both, but from all aspects, ethical, moral, spiritual. I even expand that list from the economic aspect. How do I engage in my business or my job? How do I engage in my community? How do I engage within the confines of my gurdwara, of my household, of my home? It is essentially how to live and how not to live. What are the things to avoid, and what are the things to pursue? My personal opinion, by the way, we've had this topic, SikhRI Maryada and other things in our day-to-day lives, but even at specific sessions. And, you know, sometimes I see a lot of focus on what not to do, like the 4 kurets, right? Don't disrespect of hair from part of the body, and no smoking, no adultery, no kata, and no, don't do this. And the focus is always on the no, but you know, the SikhRI Maryada, if we look at it, there's so many things of do. You know, what is the Gurmat way of life? And I'm going to touch upon a few of those today. But that's the interpretation of Rahit Maryada. So the very first code of conduct that you know, in our context of what we consider, you know, what we come to understand is really the oral basis that Guru Gobind Singh bequeathed to the Panj Pyare, the 5 beloved ones, in 1699. So those were the oral, that was the oral communication to the original Panj Pyare. Now, however, during the 18th century, so subsequent to that, in the 1700s, there have been many textual references, textual sources where individuals have written down what they understood the Sikh or the Khalsa Rahits to be. However, none have been able to, you know, in our research and in the research of other individuals in the past, the conclusion is that none have been to comprehensively really capture the original verbal communication. Okay, and at the end of the day, it's a community exercise, so not really one individual can do that. For example, there are, you know, some very tremendous things found in certain individuals, Rahat Namas, it's also called sometimes, or the textual references. Chopa Singh, a contemporary of Guru Gobind Singh as well, his text has certain things that are completely antithetical to the Sikh faith, to our Gurmat traditions, right? For instance, he says that Brahmins should be considered supreme. There's a separate section on how Amrit ceremony should be conducted for the Brahmins and for non-Brahmin castes, and that women should never be trusted. So something like this in a Rahatnama, where there are a lot of positive things, one has to take a look at it, one has to understand it from the Gurmat perspective. Let's look at the Bani, let's look at the historical precedents, and then let's look at what is really our tradition today taking place. So many other examples, I'm not going to go through that, but understand that there were individual Rahats that were available during all of the 18th as well as 19th century. And basically what this slide is saying is, you know, different examples. The Panth always, in the form of the Panj Pyare, you know, even with Guru Gobind Singh while he was, you know, on this earth with us in physical form, the Panj Pyare were operating, you know, with the same authority as the Guru. And also subsequent to Guru Gobind Singh, Banda Singh Bahadur had the Panj Pyare giving him advice along the way, etc. So the Panth in general had the authority to implement the Rahats, but not in isolation, of course, from with the foundation of the scripture, with the foundation in light of the Guru Granth Sahib. In the 18th and 19th century, once again, even though there were many textual references available, it was implemented orally. We have some evidence in that from non-Sikh writers, John Malcolm's Sketch of the Sikhs, and a few other 18th, 19th century writers explained that it was an oral tradition. The missal system had, you know, a really you know, strong way of you know, communicating the Rahats to the individual jathas, but then coming together in the Sarbat Khalsa form. We're not going to go over the details of that. We actually have a whole separate session we can do on Sarbat Khalsa, which is a really fascinating topic if people aren't familiar with that. During the course of the 19th century, Sikhs were continuously in battle, hiding in the jungles. We know our history. So the dharamshalas or the gurdwaras or our centers of learning, our centers of spiritual and political learning, were under the control of, those that weren't visibly Khalsa, weren't keeping the external manifestations of the Sikhs. Different jathas like the Udasis and the Nirmalas kept that up. So as time went on, the practices and our identity starts deteriorating, and many instances where the practices are completely antithetical to our faith and traditions and is, essentially, quote unquote, Hinduized, so engulfed in the Hindu fold. Towards the end of the 19th century, the annexation of the Sarkar-e Khalsa, Maharaja Ranjit Singh's demise, and then the chaos that continued after that. British take over. There's a census done by the British in 1855, and in that Sikhs are categorized as Hindus. We all know today in the Indian Constitution, Sikhs are categorized as Hindus. Even back then they were. But in 1871 there was a specific change to the census, and Sikhs were a separate entity on the census. Then there were all of these different movements going on way back then, even Radha Swamis, Nirankaris, Namtaris, different attempts of asserting identity are taking place. Then on the other hand, from the Hindu section of the community, a group called the Arya Samaj comes up and is aggressive in presenting a modified view of the Hindu faith. And believe it or not, by the end of the 1800s, they start these campaigns of Shuddhi. And what it really was to try and get Muslims who had been forcibly converted and bring them back to the Hindu fold. However, they did similar things with Sikhs as well. And the Shuddhi ceremony for the Sikhs, believe it or not, it has been documented, was a public assassination of the Kesh, Kesanda Qatl, in public, and then basically a ritual ceremony which affirms that they are back in the Hindu fold. And there were at times when the Kesh would be tied, the cut Kesh of the Sikhs that were converted would be tied together to show how many Sikhs had been converted back, quote unquote, converted back to the Hindu faith through the Shuddhi ceremony. So you see, there's a lot of pressure externally, internally, because of the Khalsa did not have control of their institutions, the dharamshalas, gurdwaras. So what's the Sikh spirit look like? It's very low. There's apathy. Predictions start coming forth that Sikhi soon would die. It would be engulfed in the Hindu fold. And then there's like 3 or 4 critical events that took place that kind of created a revivalist movement. I wouldn't say a reform movement, which is some academics have presented as a reform. I like to present it as a revivalist movement. Number 1 is Ernest Trump. He does a translation of the Guru Granth Sahib, of the Ad Granth, the first non-Punjabi or translation in a different language, in which he ridiculed the Sikh doctrines and theology, also predicted that Sikhi would soon be engulfed in the Hindu faith. Then this incident I want to share with you. It's a very somber incident. The Christian missionaries had also started becoming very pervasive in the Punjab area at that time. And so in front of the Amritsar Mission School, 4 Sikh children of well-known families officially converted to Christianity right in front of the mission school in public, by also getting their the disrespect of their Kesh, by getting their Kesh assassinated, or Kesanda Qatl Shaream hoya. This sent shudders and like an earthquake within the Sikh intelligence community. The Rahits, the well-known Sikh families, they just could not take that. Although it was happening in the case of Arya Samajis, this was a very public, a new entity, the Christian entity coming in and converting the Sikhs. Reason why this is very somber for me, in mid-1990s, I read specifically in the Sikh Spokesman and Fulwari, these are prevalent magazines of that time, that in a school run by the SGPC. I'm talking about the mid-1990s. The 11th grade or the 12th grade, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, 12 students, Sikh students, on the very same day go to a barber shop and get their case assassinated. So I kind of, when I read that, I kind of compared it to this incident. There were 4 kids that did it in public, and it sent shudders, and the whole revolution of the Singh Sabha Lehar started. Mid-1990s, I think those 12 that, basically shed their Guru Sarup on that one same day in that single class, I bet half of us who are on this call today haven't even heard of that incident take place. Something to think about. Anyway, also there was another revolution going on, similar to probably the communication and internet revolution right now. Now, anything that happens in any part or any village or any town was easily spread. Previously, it wasn't the case, but with newspapers, railroads, postal service, courtesy of the British, of course, the railroads and postal service, now things were very well and easily known to the community. So this is where the revivalist movement starts. I'm going to just stop here. I see that there's a question. 1 second. Okay, very good. Very good question from Jasjeet Singh in Leeds, UK. In terms of tradition, how reliable are Sikhs as sources of ethical and moral guidance? In this regard, what actually constitutes Sikh tradition? It's a very interesting question. The whole genre of Janam Sikhs has been, I would say, both being attacked by Western scholarship. At the same time, it's also being, the letter of the law, quote unquote. So it's been literally interpreted at the same time. The Janam Sikhi tradition is our old tradition. Traditions that have been within the Sikh community, we name it in our Sikh vocabulary as Sina Basina Chalde Aariyan Rita, right? So bosom to bosom, from our mothers, from our grandmothers, from our grandparents, the Sikhs that have been coming down. No matter how much mystical aspect we might see in that, we have to remember, and this is my personal interpretation, by the way, others may have different opinions, we have to see the Sikhya from the Sikhi. The problem is we focus on the historical incidents and the events, and we don't extract from that, based on the Gurmat traditions, what really is the Sikhya, what's the teaching of the Sikhi. My grandmother was telling a Sikhi to my little cousin, of the Sacha Soda Sikhi, where Guru Nanak Sahib goes out and does the Sacha Soda. Instead of using the 20 rupees or 25 rupees to create some profit, he buys food and langar for the Sads. Well, my grandma, my Nani ji, is telling my little cousin, born brought up in India, brought up in the U.S. He goes, Guru Nanak went to the Patel brothers grocery store and he got food and he served it in the langar in the Gurdwara, right? So the contemporization of that, it's a Janam Sikhi tradition. She contemporized that just subhavik, just by intuition, and the point got across that, hey, it's better to serve the community than to use your whole life pursuing business and profit. Although she didn't say, she loves when her kids and her grandkids are being successful in business, but you get the point. So the Sikhi should be looked at that light, and I don't know if that answers your question, but that's something that came to mind when you asked this. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater is my view on the Janam Sikhs and Sikh tradition. Okay, keep those. That was a really good question, and that's in the light on which we also have to look at the Rahit Maryada as well, and where some of the quotes within the Rahit Maryada comes from. Anyway, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because we're chugging along. Singh Sabha movement starts. You got to understand the situation at that time. There's multiple jathas. Everyone's being revived, trying to get things done. Results of the Singh Sabha Lehar are institutions like the Chief Khalsa Diwan. There was also a lot of international involvement. Sikhs had spread across many countries in the world, many continents. A movement on the political realm was the Akali movement. on the Gurdwara realm to get our Gurdwaras back into the control of the Sikhs was the Gurdwara Reform Movement, and ultimately the creation of the Shromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee in 1925. So what they understood in 1925, I'm going to skip over this. There was a lot of different progress that the Singh Sabha Lair can take credit for. Everyone might know this, or maybe not, that there were idols, there were murtis in the precincts of the Darbar Sahib, and there were murti puja, etc. going on. 1905, those get removed. 1908, first Sikh educational conference, and this was a conference that was done yearly in multiple villages, and I have a whole list. You can get this from Ganda Singh's book, Singh Sabha Lair and Socio-Political Movements of the Punjab, and it lists the amount of schools and the amount of colleges that were created as a result of the Sikh Educational Conference. Khalsa Baradri is an organization that gets set which kind of does away with this distinction of high caste Sikhs and low caste Sikhs and their Amrit ceremony being different, which was prevalent at that time in certain sections. McAuliffe publishes his Sikh Religion. 1912, legalization of the Anand Marriage Act. 1914, the Kirpan is exempt from the Arms Act. But basically what's happening, the Singh Sabha Lair and the organizations that it was, purview, within its purview, newsletters, questionnaires, fundraising. One of the most interesting things about the Singh Sabha organizations is the accountability. Where the finances came, where they went, how they were being used was very, very detailed. So there was no scope for money being misappropriated, at least from evidence that I've seen, whereas obviously that's not the case today in some of our institutions. And not only that, but what are the resources? Who are the individuals that are available to participate in Singh Sabha activities? It was very, very unique. Worthwhile reading as much as you can about the Singh Sabha movement. So what happened is, at the time of the SGPC being created, it came to be known that there are 37 different versions of what one would call a SikhRI Maryada that was available. And there was no one consistent, uniform Rahat. There was a lot of confusion, lots of issues arising as a result. So the SGPC so a lot of the contents I already mentioned was not in consonance with the Guru's teaching. So in 1927, it established what's called a Rahit subcommittee. And the committee was established specifically, and this is strictly right out from the SikhRI Maryada's preface, 1927, and it, quote unquote, to prepare a draft Rahit in light of the Rahatnamas and other Sikh texts and in consultation with leading Sikh scholars. Professor Teja Singh, he was the convener of this committee. Many, many notable Sikhs were involved in it, by Veer Singh, Paikan Singh Nabha, Akali Kaur Singh, and others. As the ongoings of this committee and preparing drafts were taking place, information and soliciting of feedback from not just Sikh institutions within the Punjab or within India, but also US, Canada, UK, Kenya, Malaysia. Now think about it, we're talking about the 1920s, 1930s. Even though it was a big progress since maybe the mid-1800s, it was really difficult to get information across the seas, but still they put in a lot of focus and a lot of effort, so you got to just imagine the context of that time, of how much effort it must have taken and how much patience it must have taken to really get information, really get feedback from the different organizations. So this committee was established in 1927. Primary sources that it's used, and we can actually see that from the text of the SikhRI Maryada that we have today. Primary sources: Guru Granth Sahib, Bhai Gurdas Ji's Bani and Bhai Nandlal Ji's Bani. It also took reference from other literal and oral traditions, Sadlo Granth, Dasam Granth, the Rahatnamas of Bhai Nandlal Ji, Bhai Daya Singh, Bhai Desa Singh, Chopa Singh, and many others as well. And basically, first in 1936, a more established draft was prepared and presented. There were still some, concerns, questions, or issues that came up within the committee. So it took them another 9 years to finally the form that we have today. In February 1945, resolution number 97 is when the SikhRI Maryada that we know today got approved. I want to make a couple of notes over here. Many people interpret or believe that the SikhRI Maryada is the Maryada of the SGPC, and that is absolutely not the case. The SGPC, being the one who assigned the committee, did that at the Akal Takht. So it was under the, how we say in Punjabi, Akal Takht de Chattar Chhaya Het. So it was in consonance with the Akal Takht, or the representative of the Guru Khalsa Panth, where the Shromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee was asked to prepare a draft of the SikhRI Maryada. It just so happens that today the SikhRI Maryada is published by the SGPC, but guess what? They don't have the exclusive right of being the sole publishers. Other organizations in the past have indeed published exact same text, exact same copy of the SikhRI Maryada. So that's one misconception I want to kind of try and make clear. It's primarily published by the SGPC, but it is accepted as, sometimes it's also known as the Panthikrat. It's called the SikhRI Maryada of the Akal Takht as well at many times. I'm having another question over here, kind of an interesting question. This is probably an interpretation. Wasn't the SGPC created by the British to downplay the Nihang influence? There are many, I would say, a lot of analysis is being done of the historical incidents that occurred during that time. SGPC created in 1925. I presented to you that the Singh Sabha Lehar started in the late 1800s. So that's about 30 years of work going on. Some, once again, this is the real danger of allowing the Western scholars to present your history. People like MacLeod and others presenting that the Singh Sabha Lehar was heavily influenced by the British, and there was connivance with the British government. So anyone can interpret from that perspective. This is my view on the SGPC. We have a fundamental issue, and Dr. Ayya Singh presents it a lot better than maybe I can. But the SGPC, even today, is in existence because of the act of government, of a specific non-Sikh government. In those days, it was the British. In this day and age, today, it is of India. So the Indian Government Act, called the All India Gurdwara Act, has in it a sanction for the establishment of the SGPC. At the end of the day, the SGPC is independent. Its elected members are elected by those that are considered Sikh, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if we don't have an issue with what the status of the SGPC is today, back then, the creation of the SGPC, or some people may not have. But then there's another group. There's two schools of thought for everything. There's another group that says the existence of the SGPC to begin with is flawed, and today also it's flawed. I am not here to present personally or from a Sikh Research Institute perspective which one is correct, which one is not correct. I do agree and acknowledge that there are two different schools of thought in this area right now. At the end of the day, let's come back to the SikhRI Maryada and see what it's trying to do. My interpretation here is the SikhRI Maryada, regardless of the SGPC, is trying to, bring us on a stable, unified platform, off of which there's multiple interpretations that are available and that are okay to do. And that's the beauty of our Sikh traditions, that at the end of the day, when a Sarbat Khalsa was called, for example, there may be 11 missals, different jathas, each having their own forms of, this is how we do nitname, and this is the color that we're going to wear for the stars, etc., etc. But when they come on the Sarbat Khalsa, all those differences are considered non-consequential. The essence of the binding force is the Guru Granth Sahib and the Guru Khalsa Panth traditions that are standard across the board, right? So we got to look at it this way. And even today, whenever there's a issue of the community, the Nihang Jathas, the Sampradaya Jathas, the SGPC, the intellectual Jathas, they all come together. It's very difficult to get consensus. It was back then as well, but that's our tradition, is to not quote unquote say that jatha is wrong, that jatha is wrong. So bringing it back to the Sikhat Maryada. So I want to, if anyone does not have a copy of it, I want to really very strongly give my opinion that you should get a copy, read it. It's hardly, I would say, 30. I have it in front of me. 29 pages, at least the Punjabi version. There is an English translation that is sanctioned by the SGPC, but others have also translated in English, maybe a little bit better English than what comes out of India. Dr. Inderpreet Singh Sandhu here in the US has done an English translation, which I like a little bit better. But anyway, read it, and you will notice that it's divided into two separate sections, major sections. One is Shaksi Rani, and the other is Panthik Rani. Shakshi meaning individual aspect. But remember I said that the key difference with our faith is that it is not about individual quote-unquote salvation. It is not about individual improvement in our spiritual and political lives. It's about the corporate or the community improvement. So there is a major section which is on Panthik Rani. Big issue going on back then and even today is who is a Sikh. So, of course, the Sikhat Maryada, just to get a baseline, you'll notice the first opening is what defines a Sikh. One who believes in one immortal Akal Purakh, the 10 Guru Sahibs, the Guru Granth Sahib, the initiation ceremony bequeathed by the Dasam Pacha, Guru Gobind Singh Sahib, sometimes called Amrit, traditionally called Khande Ki Paul. And also has no allegiance to any other religion. So this is being, you have to start, before you start presenting a code of conduct for a group or a community, you have to identify, you have to present what is that community, and anyone who prescribes to these aspects is considered a Sikh, and then everything that applies after that definition applies to that Sikh. There are some schools of thought that say, hey, if I believe I'm a Sikh, I'm a Sikh. Who can deny you from believing that you're a Sikh? Sure, that I actually can understand that. There's my very good friends of the Jewish community. They also have, or a portion of the Jewish community also has that type of interpretation. If I call myself a Jew, who can deny you from being a Jew? But at the end of the day, there's got to be some border, some boundaries from which like I can say I'm a Sikh, but I go and indulge in very, very un-Sikh-like activities. You got to then think about it. I mean, that's dangerous not for the individual themselves, but also for the community at large. So there's some boundaries, and the Sikhat Maryada presents the definition of a Sikh to present the boundaries. Okay, so on Sikh's personal life, all the do's, I would say, are here, but a lot of don'ts as well. But let's focus on the do's a lot more, is my attitude, right? What is the nitname? All Sikhs should participate in Nam Bani Da Abhyas is where it starts, right? So all aspects of Naam Bani da Abhyas in the form of nickname? What is the Ardas? What constitutes a Sangat? What are the protocols of the Gurdwara? How to take a hukam? How to take part? And let me give you an example. The problem was taking the hukam. There were certain jathebandis that would take a hukam from a different manner in the Guru Granth Sahib. There were some quote-unquote deras, and this is oral tradition that I have come to know through my research and through my talking to Gurmukhs, which would say that in the morning you open up the Guru Granth Sahib, you take the hukam from the left because the sun shines from the east and it lights over there, and in the evening you take it from the right because the sun is going down in the west, and usually that's where the Guru Granth Sahib is placed, east-west. Those kind of things are literally being brought down as oral tradition in some jathebandis. And then there was also times where, the Mahants had gotten a little, quote-unquote, greedy, corrupt, and if it was time for a, like an Anand Karaj, and you get a very somber, very, intense hukamnama, the Granthi Singh would change the page so that it's a more kushida hukamnama. So it's a more happy occasion, so that, if it's a happy occasion, the family is happy, the Granthi expects to get a little bit more peta, a little bit more money for, having a hukamnama from a happy occasion. So these were the issues at hand, so they standardized the way of how to take the hukam. And you can read the SikhRI Maryada as to what the standard practice is. Part, the Sahaj part, Akhand part, Prashad, what constitutes Kirtan and what constitutes Katha. Also, life cycle ceremonies. In the SikhRI Maryada, there are 4 that are sanctioned. I contend that, remember, you got to take the spirit of the law. So 4 are there, and you read the letter of it. The spirit is, for example, some families, some gurdwaras try to revive the Charni Lagna ceremony, when the child for the first time reads the Guru Granth Sahib in the presence of the Sangat. Those types of ceremonies, I think, are to be celebrated. These are, I would say, are oral Sina Basina Chaldi Ariyan Rita, coming from bosom to bosom, and beautiful type of ceremonies we have that might not be contained within the SikhRI Maryada, but you got to understand it as the foundation, as the boundary. Expositions, what is seva, what is this one, how to present it. Here's a couple more. Those, I hope everyone can read Gurmukhi. I love this quote, straight from the SikhRI Maryada, Guru ka Sikh, Garib di dasna nu Guru ki golak jane. Understand the mouth of a poor to be the treasure box of the Guru. So this is giving us indication of how to live our life, what to do. We may be very successful in our careers and business, and we have a lot of bank balances, which we need in this day and age, but at the end of the day, a Sikh should be inspired to share their wealth with the needy. So that's a beautiful aspect. Another one, there's a lot of disconnect between the individual Sikh and the community Sikh. And the community Sikh, I mean, at the ultimate level, the Guru Khalsa Panth. So the SikhRI Maryada presents to us what is the status of the Guru Khalsa. Tyar bar tyar singhan de samuchya samhu nu Guru Panth akhde han. Where did this come from? Is the tiyari dasan Guru Sahiban ne kiti ate dasam Guruji ne is the antam sarup banke guriyai sompi. So the guruship of the Guru Khalsa Panth in combination with the Guru Granth Sahib is presented, the evidence that we get after the Khalsa came up with, the SikhRI Maryada is available over here. So here's there are a lot of aspects of what not to do. I would actually, by the way, recommend to you, Dr. I.J. Singh has recently written maybe 2, maybe 3 essays on interpreting of the SikhRI Maryada and its language context. It seems to be very male-oriented, but you got to look at, understand the time frame in which it was drafted. He has some really good points, which I won't cover over here. We've got another question. Just hold on. Let me read it. Very good question. So I think Meeta Kaur from Union City, California is going off of my comment about how Sikhi is a combination of individual orientation, right, Shaksi Rani, as well as community orientation, Sangat orientation, Panthik Rani. So she asks, how do we reconcile living in an individual-oriented culture, quote-unquote, Western culture, while striving for Panthik or communal state of mind? Seva seems like the solution. What else can we do? Seva, yes, absolutely. Now, Seva, believe it or not, and I quote from the SikhRI Maryada, is not confined to the Gurdwara. The Seva that we do in the Gurdwara, like Langar Seva, like Chaur Sahib Seva, or the, actually, because in those days, there was actually Pakkedi Seva. People would stand up and, you know, use a hand fan to cool the Sangat as well, not just the Chaur Seva of the Guru Granth Sahib. So those are, the SikhRI Maryada presents, are the Gurdwara is the forum for us to practice the seva that we do outside of the Gurdwara in the community, right? So my first question, response to your question is seva seems like the solution, yes, but the holistic understanding of seva. So not just inside the Gurdwara, outside the Gurdwara. So that's how I would present one aspect. Another aspect is the attitude. Really, and I take it back from the SikhRI Maryada. There's another section in there that says, especially for the Khalsa, especially for those that have partaken in the initiation ceremony, from this day onwards, understand your affairs to be that of the Panth, and understand the Panthic affairs to be that of yours. That's my translation, but the original Punjabi says something. So I think the first thing we can do is start figuring out what's our attitude with our community, with our Panth. Where do I stand with my Panth? You know, at the end of the day, if it's a family affair, if it's a family you know, issue that comes up versus my ideals of Sikhi and a Panthic culture, where do I stand? So we got to make those decisions for ourselves, using the Kaswati, using the touchstone of Gurbani. As to, you know, I'm not suggesting here by any means that, oh, this worldly family that we have, the mothers and fathers that don't let us progress in our spiritual life, you know, get rid of them and go and run away. Absolutely not, because Guru Sahib is very clear on, you know, creating a really strong family bond. He's also very clear on creating a really strong community bond. So that balance in life is where we're going to have to struggle. So I don't have the answers for you, but I think understand the holistic traditions like seva, not just confined to the Gurdwara, and understand our attitude. Where do we stand in relation with the Panth and individual? That's an ongoing process. Hope that answers. And I think we're running out of time over here. My timekeepers haven't warned me anything yet, but I just noticed. Let me go really quick over some aspects of the corporate life. I already explained the Panth status of Guruhood. The Amrit ceremony is described in detail. Also, a method of imposing chastisement. So those that can be reprimanded for acts that are, quote unquote, un-Panthic or un-Sikh-like. And the purview of these, by the way, the Tankha, is those that have partaken of Amrit and entered the fold of the Guru Khalsa. And what is the procedure for adopting a Gurmata? Any local Sangat issues that may be of concern that cannot be handled within the Sangat, there's a possibility to approach the Akal Takht for that. I have to, kind of a little warning, not to be taken with the letter of the law, but to interpret this with the spirit. For example, in the Sangat, someone in the committee is committing, you know, un-Sikh-like acts just because we don't have the ability to confront compassionately and talk to them. We start sending letters to the Akal Takht. I don't think that's the right way, or that's what the intention was. When you know, issues have grave Panthic implications, for example, just very, very hypothetically, some committee presents that from this day onwards, such and such is not mandatory from the Khalsa Rahit, for example, which is established by the Khalsa, and an individual Gurdwara committee or individual member or Jatha going about and doing that. If that cannot be resolved, that's when the Akal Takht has to be brought in. But and similarly imposing chastisement, those that have made the commitment to the Khalsa ideals, if they are veering off from their commitments, the Guru Khalsa has the responsibility and the right to chastise, but not someone who might be on the path, working towards that day where they can make the public declaration that they are members of the Khalsa through Amrit. So once again, these corporate aspects of life, the Sikh corporate aspects also has to be not taken by the letter, but by taken with more compassionate spirit of the law. And that's it. I just want to present a couple of aspects of the Sikh Rahat Maryada. The Rahat, the living of a lifestyle, has sanction and is important in our faith. Those that believe as long as I'm a Sikh from inside, I don't have to show anyone what I'm doing from outside or any actions of mine, regardless of my external, articles of faith. Actually, no. Guru Sahib presents that, both internal and external have to happen simultaneously. Rahatnama Paidesa Singh gives another aspect of the importance of Rahat. Rahat pyari mujhko Sikh pyara nahi. Just because I call myself a Sikh, that's great, but that's not what I'm looking for. So Paidesa Singh is presenting this as if the Guru is giving his advice. Okay, so not to be confused with any kind of Bani. But Paidesa Singh's interpretation is that the Guru wants someone who has a positive Sikhi-like lifestyle, not someone who simply and merely calls themselves a Sikh or even feels like a Sikh from inside. You have to both feel, and on the other hand, by the way, there are many places where you will find where Guru Sahib said, just because of your actions, they might be positive, they might be, benevolent, and but with an ulterior motive. So the inside inspiration doesn't exist. Oh bhi nahi hona, dono hone chahiye ne ikatthe. And I always present it, it's like the two sides of a coin. Not one side, Sant Sipahi. That's just the way we say Sant Sipahi. It doesn't mean that Sant comes first and then comes Sipahi. Sipahi is one side, and then Sant is the other side. No one says that Sant is first or Sipahi is first. It's a coin. The Western context is a coin has a heads and tails, which has a positive versus negative connotation. Or Western interpretation hai. Sikhi da jada interpretation hai, Sant Sipahi is simultaneous. Anyway, if we take the Sikh Rahat Maryada with both the letter as well as the spirit, then it becomes a more impactful and more bringing together of the Panth, not a divisive. So the Sikh Rahat Maryada shouldn't be thrown in people's face and say, oh, you're not a Sikh because you don't conform to this. Let's be compassionate. Let's understand the context of our issues and try and bring people together. Like Guru Sahib says, Let's get rid of these confusions and create harmony. Let's at least come and sit. Our problem today, and we sound like a broken record, all of us say that, is that we don't know how to sit, we don't know how to talk, we don't know how to have an exchange and have a communication. So anyway, that's the last message of the day, is let's communicate. And the Sikh Maryada should not be confining and divisive, but more a bringing together document. There is actually one question. Should I go ahead and take that? What does the Sikh Rahat Maryada say about excommunication? Is it actually possible to excommunicate a Sikh? You can read the Sikh Rahat Maryada and you can interpret if there's anything about excommunication. But what we have come to know today, coming from Amritsar, Punjab, and what is excommunication, I'm going to leave that aside. Historical evidence. Panth Prakash of Sardar Ratan Singh Pangu does Gurinder, just let me finish this. Does present historical evidence that whether it's excommunicated or whether it's tankha, whether basically the word is roti beti di sanj nahi karni. So social and economic relationships should be shunned with individuals that have not lived up to the standards of the Khalsa. So many historical incidents, even with great heroes of the Sikhs, have shown that there have been times when the Khalsa has shunned them unless and until they come and ask for forgiveness for their misdeeds. We don't have time, otherwise I would tell. Well, actually, let me tell you the Sakhi. It's very interesting. It's associated with female infanticide. So the great hero of the Massa Rangar incident, where Massa Rangar had taken over the Darbar Sahib, was Mehtab Singh and Sukha Singh, right? I think everyone is maybe familiar with that fight. Sukha Singh got married through different circumstances with someone from a Hindu family, and it just so happened that his first daughter fell sick and died suddenly. Ratan Singh Pangu explains that there was a huge outcry in the Panth that there was a shak hagasi. There was a slight feeling that Sukha Singh may have participated in female infanticide. So even by that shak, the whole Panth, even though he was a hero, started shunning him and not allowing him into the divans of the Akal Takht until he actually gave evidence and proof that he had nothing to do with this. So two reasons for me sharing this. One is, yes, there was always a caution that someone is not veering off from the Khalsa ideals. So that's the main point of this Sakhi, of this historical incident. The second one is how badly the Khalsa Panth looked upon female infanticide. So transpose that to this day and age, what our tradition is, what our SikhRI is, and by the way, the female infanticide, by spirit of the law, female feticide, same thing. Something to think about at the end of the day. So I won't make a comment on the excommunication versus not. It's a complicated topic, but the tankha and the shunning of an individual for not living up to the Khalsa ideals absolutely is part of our tradition. Sorry for just going on, but once you get involved in this, it just keeps going. Any other last moment questions, or Jasmine, you want to conclude, or Gurinder?
Okay, looks like there are no other questions. Thank you everyone for attending. I'll be launching an evaluation pretty soon, and please feel free to fill it out and ensure our sessions are improved in the future. If you have any questions even afterwards, you can send an email to info@sikhri.org. With that, I'll conclude. Thank you everyone for joining. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.